The Lumix S5 II has been out for 1 year now, and it was one of the standout cameras from the past 12 months in 2023, and it even made some people go against everything they know and switch from the likes of the bigger brands like Canon and Sony towards Lumix. But even now, as we head into a brand new year, I still think that this might be one of the most underrated cameras, maybe even of the last 5 years or so. And it will still be a brilliant purchase for several more years to come if you are looking at buying a new camera. The S5 II is a brilliant all-round hybrid camera. It has a 24 megapixel sensor, which means that it is brilliant for photography and you can get some incredible images from it, and also some really nice print sizes as well. I have some A2 prints up on my wall here, which were all taken on the S5 II. You could print even bigger if you wanted to as well without any issues. And I've also taken some of my favorite ever photos using the Lumix S5 II. It's just a brilliant camera to use for photography if that's what you are interested in. However, it is probably the video features and specs that help to separate this camera and stand out from the rest. We'll get onto that in a minute. This is often an area that sways people to go towards a certain camera brand when they were looking at buying a new camera. For example, Canon has a huge selection of lenses to choose from, whether that's EF lenses, their RF lens mount selection is growing all of the time, and that's the same with Sony as well. They are always releasing new lenses, and there's also a huge amount of third-party lenses to choose from the likes of Tamron and Sigma. The L mount, which is what the S5 II uses, does have a much smaller selection of lenses to choose from. However, don't let that put you off if it is something you are thinking about, because they are very high quality and it is a growing selection of lenses all of the time. There's also third-party lenses like this Sigma 100-400 that I absolutely love. I've made a video about this. I will link it in the description below if you want to go and check it out. So if lenses is something that is potentially stopping you from using Lumix cameras, honestly, don't let it, because even though it is a smaller selection of lenses to choose from, there is still plenty of choice and it is a growing selection all of the time. You can also adapt plenty of other lenses as well using adapters if that is something you wanted to do as well. If you are into making Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts or TikToks, 6K open gate might be a little bit of a game changer for you. So I'm filming this now on the Lumix S5 II in 6K open gate, and that means that instead of recording a 16:9 aspect ratio like video is typically recorded in, I am recording in a 4:3 aspect ratio. That means that when I come to repurpose my landscape video into portrait for the likes of Reels or TikTok, YouTube Shorts, I have much more room at the edges of the frame to be able to crop in and create a good looking image without cropping too much of my subject. Whereas if I was to crop in on a 16:9 image, you're going to lose much more of the frame. This, I think, is one of the most useful features to have on modern day cameras. And I know this isn't strictly limited to the Lumix S5 cameras. It is available on tons of other cameras out there. I think it is just an absolutely great feature to have, and I think it's pretty much essential nowadays. I do a lot of property tour videos with work, and a lot of the time when I go into a house, the lighting is going to be pretty dreadful because you're having to rely on the main room lights and also natural light from the window. And if a room has fairly small windows, there's not going to be a lot of natural light. So when that is the case, I know that I can just bump my ISO to 4000 and I'm still going to be able to get a very clean image. It has honestly saved me so many times from having to boost my ISO way too high and just getting a terrible grainy image. Obviously you want to be shooting at your base ISO of 640 as often as you possibly can, because you're going to get the most dynamic range, you're going to get the cleanest image. But being able to have that ability to push your ISO to 4000 and get a cleaner image that you might at 3200, for example, is game changing, especially when you're doing things where you have to rely on natural light or maybe you're working in low light. It's just a great feature to have. Vlog is the best log profile that I've ever used. Lumix is famous for its color science, and they obviously work very closely with Leica as well. But when you use Vlog, it's so easy to be able to correct and grade your footage because there's not too much of a shift towards the magentas or the greens like you often get with some cameras. It just means that you get great looking skin tones all of the time. When you combine that as well with being able to shoot 10-bit 422 color with 14 plus stops of dynamic range, the sky is the limit because you have so much room to be able to push and pull the colors around and create that desired look that you want for your project. There are more codecs to choose from than you would ever need. You've got all of the different 4K and HD filming modes in 422, 420, 10-bit color. Then you've got all of the 8-bit options. If you have an external recorder attached as well, you can also record in Apple ProRes or Blackmagic RAW. Now, if you have the S5 IIX, these features are actually built straight in, but with the S5 II, you have to do a paid software upgrade to be able to do them. If you have the S5 IIX, you can also record straight to an external SSD, which is brilliant if you are using ProRes or Blackmagic RAW because those file sizes are massive. It's insane really because the features that you get in the S5 II and the S5 IIX are usually found in cinema camera bodies that are double the price, if not more than double the price of the S5 II and the S5 IIX. And yet here they are in a camera in a mirrorless body that you can get for around about $2,000. Even the amount of codecs that you get in this thing with all of the different options between 6K, 4K, HD, 10-bit, 8-bit, that's way more than you get in many other cameras of its price range. Autofocus used to be a huge talking point with Lumix cameras because they used to use contrast-based autofocus. I'm using that now with the original S5. I have contrast-based autofocus on. It is doing an okay job, I think. It is very slow when you compare it to the S5 II. I'll talk about that in a second. However, autofocus technology was moving on very quickly and Lumix still used to use contrast-based autofocus until the S5 II and the S5 IIX came out. These got a huge bump in autofocus performance because they now come with phase detect autofocus, which puts it up with the likes of Canon and Sony in autofocus performance. It's not quite there, but it is very, very close. It's not going to be quite as accurate as the likes of Sony's AI autofocus, but I have never had an issue with the phase detect autofocus in the S5 II. It works so well. There's loads of different autofocus options that you can choose from, so you can get the one that suits your needs the most. You can track animals, you can track eyes. It just works, and that is the main thing because let's be honest, autofocus performance is one of the main things that was holding back Lumix cameras for so long. And now they have a system that competes with the likes of Canon and Sony, and people are talking about Lumix again and actually switching from Canon to Lumix. This for me is the most compelling part of the S5 II because the price is just mind-bogglingly good when you compare it to other cameras. You can get the S5 II with the 20 to 60 kit lens and a 50mm 1.8 prime for £2,200. Now that might sound like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but when you compare it to the likes of the Sony a7 IV, that costs £2,200 for just the body. The R6 Mark II costs £2,600 again for just the body. Now that is a bit of a no-brainer if you ask me. 2,200 quid with two lenses. Insane value. That's not to mention as well all the other features that you get on the S5 II, like the different video assist features or the anamorphic filming modes that you don't get on other cameras of this price or cheaper. It is absolutely nuts, and I would highly recommend it. I really genuinely think this is still one of the most underrated cameras out there, and I don't really know why, because it is absolutely brilliant. There's just one feature that I would love to see on the S5 II that I've seen on another camera that I think would really separate this out from its competitors, and that is face-only autofocus. Now, I think I've seen this on Canon cameras, but it means that if you have a subject in your frame and it is focused on their face, if they were to walk out of frame, it wouldn't then focus on the background, because that can be quite jarring. Whereas if I go out of frame now, it's going to refocus on the background. Obviously I'm using the original S5, so it's a little bit slower, but you get the idea. Face only autofocus, I think, would really separate this from a lot of other cameras out there. But on the whole, I love this thing, and I love the original S5 as well. I just think they're brilliant cameras. So what do you think? Is it a camera for you? Have you made the switch already, or are you considering making the switch? Let me know in the comments below, because I'm very interested to know. I still think this is so underrated. Anyway, that is enough for this video. I'll see you in the next one.